Hi, I am Del Roby, the producer of these 3 separate whitewater river films on this video cassette. With the 1940s World War II experiences behind me, I thought running the whitewater rivers close to my home would be a great adventurous challenge, along with being a logger. The surplus boating equipment available after World War II made this challenge a reality. Adventure on the Selway was my first filming experience. Filmed in 1956, 3 of us used the 7-man Navy Frogman boat. I organized my first run down this section of the Selway River in 1949. 4 of us used a 10-man Army surplus neoprene landing boat. This was the first time this section of the river had ever been run. During the 1950s, whitewater river running was still in the experimental stage. Many hard lessons and close calls were experienced. My other 2 river films, River of No Return and Hell's Canyon Excursion, I filmed during the later 1950s. The fishing was very good, and there was no one else on the wild whitewater sections of these rivers at that time. The jet boats did not appear until the 1960s. Then the fishing started changing, and the regulations were changing, and more dams were being constructed. My first video cassette produced on my series is video number 1 of Our Wilderness Elk. This is a 60-minute film, outstanding educational adventure material. A lot of facts and interesting things is in this video. This was also selected by the Library of Congress for their permanent archival collection. I am most proud that these 3 films was selected by the Library of Congress for their permanent archival collection. They are considered classics. Now let's look at them.
On Labor Day, 1956, we, Delbert Roby, Reese Mendenhall, Bud Roach, started our long-planned adventure on the Selway River. Supplies and equipment were checked and carefully packed. One of the most important items was a block of ice for the cooler. Around it, frozen and perishable foods were placed in order to make them last 3 hot days on the river. To get to the headwaters of the Selway at Moose Creek, one must travel by air. We loaded out at the airport at Kamei, Idaho. Kamei is located in the middle of central Idaho's hunting and fishing wonderland. Most of the gear was loaded in one airplane, and we were ready for the takeoff. We circled over the scenic Kamei Valley.
This canyon is the famous Hell's Canyon of the Snake River. It cuts its way from south to north on the boundary of Oregon and Idaho. Hell's Canyon is a mile deep and 100 miles long. It is known as one of the biggest and roughest gorges in the world. Through this mammoth gash in the earth flows the Snake River. This river is the longest and the largest in Idaho, and its headwaters are in Montana and Yellowstone. It winds its way across Idaho and then flows north through the Great Canyon. The rugged Seven Devil Mountain Range forms the Idaho side of the canyon. This area will not be primitive for many more years. Civilization is moving in. Hydroelectric power dams are being planned and constructed. On an excursion into Hell's Canyon, you will need an experienced river guide. He takes the responsibility for your safety, your supplies, and comfort. He even furnishes transportation into the starting point on the river, which is Homestead, Oregon. He has special-built, proven river equipment. It takes a special type of riverboat for this trip. The craft must have airtight pontoons for safety. It must have excellent stability and motor mounts that raise and lower the motors. Running whitewater rapids in any type of river craft is a great responsibility to the pilot. Here, Delbert Roby and his crew are checking the river channel at Kenny Creek Rapids, the first roaring water of the trip. For shooting the rapids, passengers can have their choice. They may ride the big riverboat, they may walk around the rapids to take pictures, or even take a fast, wet ride in the raft. One of the biggest thrills of this Hell's Canyon trip is hooking and landing sturgeon. Sometimes it takes up to 3 hours to land one of the big fellows. There are few sturgeon habitats in the world. The Snake River drainage is one. Today, the sturgeon is a leading game fish of Idaho. Squaw Creek Rapids, the second of 6 major rapids. There are many points of interest on this trip. One is the remaining sign of Indian life. Here the party is exploring an Indian burial ground. Indian painting can be found, and it was near here that the Nez Perce Indian War was fought.
You have bought a one-way ticket through the white waters of the lower Salmon River. There is no returning up this rocky gorge once you have launched the boats. So just relax and enjoy the thrills. Deer is the big game animal here on this section of the river. An occasional riverboat is a curious sight to them, for this country is untouched. It is hard to get to. Steelhead fishing is a top sport on this river run. This fisherman is using eel. A bit messy, but wait and see what it lands. Of course, this will be with the aid of the fisherman on the big end of the pole. Sturgeon must be caught on rod and reel. The fish are big and give a fight, making this a true sport. Sometimes you wait several minutes for a sturgeon to bite. Very few people can land one of these fish by themselves. It is a good practice to have a boat handy. This enables you to get above the fish, allowing one to play him more effectively. With a boat, the fish can be followed over the rapids if he should make a long run. Fast action is required when the sturgeon takes off and heads for the rapids. Many minutes are spent fighting the fish up and down the river. One hour later, with 6 feet and 125 pounds of sturgeon, the battle ends. It is the first one this fisherman has ever caught. It is a story he can tell his grandchildren. This fisherman is being accused of doing a sloppy netting job. Never mind the jokes. He's got the fish, hasn't he? There are several methods used for catching steelhead salmon. One is using lures from shore, as you see here. Steelhead fishing is one of the foremost fishing sports of Idaho. Your river guide has made many trips down this lower Salmon River gorge. He knows most of the choice fishing spots, and since many of them can only be reached by boat, he can serve you well. From year to year, the river channel changes. This is caused by the tremendous pressure of high water in the spring. However, boating on whitewater rivers requires years of experience. It is a specialized sport, loaded with thrills. Thrills such as the ones you can have on this adventure. The mighty Snake River is just around the bend. You have had a wonderful trip on the river of no return.